time to fuel your business success. Welcome to Harmonious at Lunch. We're bringing you bite-sized advice and expert conversations to drive clarity and growth 5 days a week. Make sure you join our Facebook group at humanop.com/lunch, where listeners like you and our guests hang out so we can find harmony in business together. If you're building a business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about a topic that I am personally passionate about. I was talking to my guest before we started recording, and I know he's very passionate about it too. Kind of obvious, that's why he's here. But we're talking about exiting your business and why an exit-ready business gives you options and freedom. I could not agree more. Jim DuBos, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. I'm looking forward to conversation.
I appreciate you being here and taking the time out. I already said I agree with this. Do we need to even record? I mean, it just is what it is, right? An exit ready business.
We probably should for the people listening. We probably should.
Yes, I agree. I don't know a whole lot of people who would disagree with this statement, but I do know a whole lot of people who don't have an exit ready business just because they haven't taken the steps to do that. So why don't you give me a sense of, why this topic? Why are you passionate about helping people create exit ready business and then actually exiting those businesses?
Well, look, my own journey gave me the perspective of 7 separate exits. And I can tell you, just like probably a lot of your listeners, that I didn't start my first business thinking I was going to exit it. As I grew the business and it grew significantly, and fast over a period of years, it became apparent that it was valuable. And I had my first 2 transactions within a 5-year period of that first couple of businesses. And so it taught me something right out the gate. And so this passion for me is helping an entrepreneur understand that whether or not you truly want to sell your business or not, maybe you're not sure, but by running your business in a particular way with a particular set of, I'll call it attributes and a lens towards those attributes, you're going to give yourself freedom and you're going to give yourself options. I'll tell one quick story. I had a good friend who ran his business really well and contracted, a life-threatening illness. But because he had run his business in a particular way, he could step away and deal with what he needed to deal with on a personal level, but his business was not so founder dependent. He didn't lose his business, right? He was able to process through that experience and then return back to his business in a very, thankfully, in a very good way. And so I feel like this is something that entrepreneurs really need to contemplate as they're running their day-to-day businesses.
Yeah, 100%. I've heard those stories. I've heard them told both ways. I've heard it, that beautiful example, and then also the unfortunate example of through an illness or an injury, whatever it may be, the business failed because it was so heavily reliant on the founder or on one individual. So just to kind of set the stage here, I don't think either you or I are advocating that you have to sell your business, but getting it sellable is really the key of what you're talking about. So
yeah,
for those lenses that you said, or the things to focus on, I'm curious to explore what those are. So what are these key areas that businesses need to focus on in order to have an exit ready business?
So what I did was, after the last exit, which was in 2022, it was a fairly large business. We were 75 million in revenue, over 100 employees. And so what I did is I said, I'm going to take a step back and really build a fairly concise list of attributes. And so that's basically become the basis of what I refer to as the exit ready method. And when you visit my website at dubos.me, you'll find a free list, right? You basically just go to the website, enter a basic email address, and I'm going to give you this exit ready method, if you will. And you can take an assessment. That was the other thing that I wanted to do, was to build a tool that would be very simple for any entrepreneur to go and experience and say, where am I on this journey? Because what you're really trying to do is build a company that is financially strong and is as founder independent as possible, which is a little sometimes, I guess, foreign, because typically entrepreneurs, we're all generally really, really good at a lot of things, which means we can do a lot in our companies. But the question is, should we be doing all those things? And so as you grow and scale and you want to build out a team, what you're trying to do is make the company actually less dependent on you, but still run by these particular attributes. And so it's basically a list of 15 attributes with an ability for you to self-score where you are in the journey. And it's something that's based upon my own experience across my 7 personal exits that I've done.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll just interject real quick. For those of you watching, I put the website on the screen. It's also down below in the show notes, wherever you're watching or listening. So you can go on over to the website, grab that checklist, and check that out. But finish the episode first. Let's stay here for now.
Please.
But Jim, I want to dive into, we don't have time to go through all 15, but
Sure.
I want to start to get a sense of what these are, and maybe even through the lens of what do you see people missing the most out of the 15? Are there a couple that really stand out that people just are not prepared for?
Well, I think if you go back to the initial comment, which is looking at your company as an asset, right? An asset has value. Well, what are going to be the things that are going to make that asset valuable? And I'll use one concrete example is what is your recurring, revenue versus one-time revenue? It's a simple example, right? So on one side, we're all subscription-based, right? The Netflix, subscription-based. Well, what percentage of your revenue comes from a recurring revenue component versus one-time revenue? Well, guess what? When you're going through a business valuation process, that's a core component of how much your business is going to be worth. And so, I mean, just recently I was having a conversation with a startup, and he was like, well, okay, the first deals are going to be $15,000. And I'm like, why? And we went through this dialogue and kind of walked through this. Hey, well, you can do this at $600 or $700 a month and make the value of the business significantly greater than if you were just doing these one-time transactions. So that's an example of looking at the attributes. The second example I would give you would be your customer concentration. Does any customer of yours generate more than 10% of the total revenue of the business? Why? Because a potential buyer would look at it and go, well, there's a risk there, because if that customer leaves, now I've got an investment challenge. How long is it going to take me to recoup the investment that I'm making? So those are two simple examples of the types of things that you measure in this self-score process against your business.
I want to talk about the subscription one because, obviously we're all too familiar with this. I feel like everything is a subscription nowadays, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. It just depends on how you're looking at it and what it's for. But on that, does that also take into account contracts that you have in place? Or is it truly just like monthly recurring revenue?
So anytime I built the last several businesses that I had recurring revenue components within those businesses, they were always contractually oriented, whether they're 1, 2, or 3 year contracts. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if it's month to month, the potential buyer or investor is not going to look at it any differently than if it's one-time revenue. And so that is important, is to have a term, hopefully with an auto renew, capability, because really what you're demonstrating is the repeatability of revenue, right? The long-term repeatability of revenue. And so that is why that matters so much. And typically in recurring revenue is where you can disconnect the transition from growth to scaling. So if you think about what is true growth is basically I'm going up in revenue, but so is my incremental cost. So my expense travels basically on the same linear path as the growth revenue. In scale, I'm disconnecting them. I'll give you a concrete example. Recently, I worked with a hair salon of all things, right? And we introduced a membership model because she had a lot of repeat customers who were coming in on a periodic basis. We just introduced a membership model. She planned for a certain percentage of those customers coming in every month. All they had to do was go online and book their appointments. But she generated over 60% of her revenue month in and month out, regardless of whether or not those people came in the doors or not. Totally changed her business model. Right. And it was just a 12-month membership agreement that because the people liked her, and the way they cut, the individual's hair. It was amazing. Right. It was amazing. Simple. Right. But what it allowed her to do, because it was disconnected with the one-time revenue, she had about 10 to 15% of extra capacity that she could manage walk-ins with. Now, all of a sudden, she's generating more revenue than she would have if she was just doing one-on-one point of service transactions. It was remarkable the way it worked.
So because of the subscription model, she was able to cover her costs with that essentially, and then everything else, the walk-ins were.
It was extra revenue. It was extra revenue for her every month. It was amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to approach that conversation? Because I hear a lot of people wanting to go with the subscription, whether it's monthly or it's annual contracts, whatever it is, but they kind of assume that needs to be their whole business. So how do you approach the subscription model, knowing that, if you get it wrong, it could be a disaster?
Yeah, sure.
And
Look,
you could repel people with it.
I think the question really that needs to get asked is, are you ready to scale? Are you ready to scale? So when you're growing, right, you get past this, I call it the stability stage, and you're just trying to grow revenue in your business. Well, are you ready to scale? And what that really means is, first I need to understand what product or service is generating the majority of the margin in the business, not the revenue, the margin in the business. And so once I understand that, it could be, I'm sure it's a handful. Vern Harnish, one of my favorite authors, wrote Scaling Up. It's a book on the back shelf here, but he had a great line in the book, and it's that 20% of the things you sell generate 80% of the margin in your business. And so it's remarkable when you really peel back and look at the business and say, well, gosh, these 4, 5, 6 things are the things that really, put the oil in the machine, so to speak. Well, those are the places that I would be focusing and going, okay, where can I look at this and turn this into a recurring stream, because they're generating every month anyway. That's how I generally approach the subscription, model.
Yeah, no, it's a great approach, of course. And it also comes with, I've seen it come with some emotions where people love the other 80% for some reason, and they want to keep doing those things, and they think that's the most important. But I guess my advice there would be, look at the numbers.
Look, I'll give you a count. My last business, we had literally millions and millions of dollars a year in annual recurring revenue and services, right? These were, service and support, that things that were done 10 years ago were traditional pay by the hour services. And so in many cases, your customer communities are looking for ways to normalize their expenses. Because if you're a business owner, the one thing you hate is surprises and surprise expenses. And so really what you're doing by bringing a subscription model to your customer is you're giving them a way to normalize the expenses that they would incur over a period of time. And that's a plus to a business owner. Why? Because I can plan, right? I can plan for my expenses. And that's really I would say, the one advantage to this. Also, industry, depending upon the industry of the business, you probably have some of those pressures inside of your industry anyway. Now, there aren't many businesses. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about Uber, and Uber is rolling out this monthly program for people who are Uber users, because and you think about that and you're going, I would have never thought that Uber would have been a Netflix model, but they are, they are.
Yeah. I mean, one way to look at that is, if nobody's doing it, it might be an opportunity.
Sure.
It's definitely worth exploring.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to talk about the other side of this before I let you go. I don't know if it's necessarily the other side. That might be a bad way to describe it, but one of the common pushbacks that I hear from people, and I know I definitely fell into this trap personally in the past, and that is the founder or owner building all of the relationships. I mean, when you start a business, most of the time, unless you're well funded, it's a solopreneur venture or a very, very small team, and you end up building the relationships from the beginning, and that kind of scales with the business. So I'm curious, with your experience, 7 exits, especially this last one, very, very large business, how did you begin to separate yourself from having all of the relationships to really putting those on the people you put in place to run the business so that you could step away and still continue to scale?
Look, it's a great question, but fundamentally businesses are about people. And so the primary obligation that you have as the entrepreneur, owner, founder is you will not be able to grow your business and do everything. And so the key hires, when you hire people, you have to ask yourself, do they have the personality, the disposition, the care that I have towards the customers that we need to serve? So that as you grow the team out, you know that those folks are going to be taken care of. Because at the end of the day, as egotistical as we might all like to think that customers really, it just has to be Brandon, it just has to be Jim, or I don't want to do business with you. That's not the reality. The reality is that customers are willing to do business with anyone, knowing that you are the one who put them in their place, right? In their orbit, so to speak. And so as long as they feel like they're cared for the way Jim or Brandon would care for them, they're perfectly fine. Right? They're perfectly fine. So to me, the focus on the customer experience, not just satisfaction, but the actual customer experience. And quite frankly, my own experience has taught me the employee experience by focusing as the entrepreneur, as what I'm going to call employee centric. Take care of your customers, because take care of your employees because they take care of your customers. By doing those things well, those employees are going to take care of those customers the way you would, or if not better in many cases. And so that's been my own journey. My own journey is focus on that employee because they're the one who's going to be day in, day out on with the customer. Customers will always want to talk to you. They'll always want to know Brandon's reachable. But at the end of the day, they're willing to interact on a day in, day out basis with anyone inside of the four walls of the business.
Absolutely. I had the same experience myself, actually, where, feeding into the people, into the employees, the byproduct is very happy customers. And the other part of that too is it's actually funny when you do empower those people to step in and deal with the customers, they often do it way better than you do as the founder because you're spinning 100 plates. So put that one down, give it to somebody else. Your customers will have a better experience, and in turn, you'll have a better company. So,
100%.
Kind of ironic.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Jim, this was a fun episode. I love this conversation, and I'm just as passionate about it. That's not true. You're way more passionate, but I love it too. I want to put that out there, and I want you to help a lot of companies become exit ready. So, if someone is in this phase of their business life cycle, or maybe they're considering an exit, or maybe they want to talk about the scaling option first, what's the best way to get in touch with you and have that conversation?
So simple way would be to email me at entrepreneurship@dubos.me. It's an email that'll land right in my inbox. You can obviously go to the website and fill out the contact form, or if you're on any one of the three, I'll say customer journeys, whether you're on a launch, a scale, or you're thinking about exit, I'm reachable through any one of those methods. So I'd be more than happy to help any one of your listeners in their journeys, because to me that's the fun part is honestly helping others achieve their goals in their business. So I'm thrilled to help you.
Yeah, I love it. And this question just popped in my head. I promise I will let you go eventually
That's
today.
fun.
But 7 exits, which one, speed round here, which one stands out in your mind as maybe your favorite, and why?
My favorite was my last one, and it was my last one not just because it was my largest exit, but I feel like at the end of the 35-year journey with this particular business, it was the most fulfilling journey because I really felt like I had the relationships with the employee team. I felt like we had built a phenomenal customer, I'll say a group, right? Community. So that particular company was just, very fulfilling in that sense, and being able, I think that's a misconception sometimes, Brandon, that people think that if I leave my company, my employees are going to be angry, my customers are going to be angry. And that's not the case at all. Right. And in doing this 7 times with many of the same employees who have come back with me over and over and over again, they know that at the end of it, the end of this journey, I want what's best for them as individual employees to continue to elevate and continue to move forward in their own professional careers. And I want what's best for them, customer communities as well. And so that don't be afraid, I guess would be that message there of that potential, I'll say, fear that maybe naturally comes when you're thinking about exits. But so that's my true last one was probably my most fulfilling.
Yeah, that's cool, especially, and it's refreshing in the world of AI that we live in. It all comes back to the people. Customers 100%. Are people, employees are people, people are people, robots are not people.
We could do another whole episode on AI. Oh, yeah. Brandon, we could.
Yes, we could do several, I'm sure. But Jen, this was awesome. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
For those of you watching, listening, all the links are down in the show notes below. As I mentioned before, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch.
Another episode of Harmonious at Lunch in the books. I hope this episode made you think and you grabbed some actionable ideas to propel your business. Don't forget to like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe wherever you're listening so we can help more entrepreneurs just like you achieve harmony